The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Israeli forces over the weekend entered the Gaza Strip in response to the relentless rocket attacks from Palestinian groups. The terrorist organization Hezbollah, as designated by the US, by Australia, Canada, France, the EU, Netherlands, UK, Israel, Bahrain, has vowed to help Hamas in this fight. Rockets have been intercepted over the greater Tel Aviv area. Gaza militants have infiltrated the south of Israel, reportedly via tunnels. And I think that this was a very, very bad decision by Israel to start this ground incursion into Gaza. And I will tell you why after giving you some more of the facts on the ground. The Israeli death toll is reportedly at 18. 6 specific soldiers have been named. At least 130 Palestinians have been killed since the ground incursion began, bringing the total death toll to just over 500 since the beginning of the operation about 2 weeks ago. 2 Americans are among the Israeli soldiers who have been killed. USA Today reports that Max Steinberg, 24, and Sean Carmelli, 21, of Los Angeles and Texas, respectively, are among the dead. Palestinian groups are continuing to launch rockets from civilian areas and homes. Israeli troops have also uncovered 45 tunnel shafts, including some inside homes and mosques. Of course, regardless of how good or bad of an idea this is for Israel, and I believe it is a bad idea, if you continue building tunnels that go to homes and mosques, if you continue launching rockets from homes and schools, there will be many more Palestinian dead. There is no question about it. But my main thing here, Lewis, is I just don't think this was a good idea from Israel's point of view. Number one, whether it's a ground incursion or whether it's the destruction of the rocket launch sites or whatever it is, we have a pretty good number of years now over which we've observed that these military actions do not get the situation any closer to peace, but they do further aggravate anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli sentiment. And to that end, I think this is a terrible decision by Israel.
I think it came a little bit late. The thing about a ground invasion is that if you are trying to take down these launch sites from the ground, from inside Gaza, in theory, you can do that while highly limiting civilian casualties, as opposed to firing rockets into the country and really not knowing who you're killing. So I think had they perhaps started with a ground invasion in an attempt not to kill innocent civilians, that might have been a better idea. It seems a little bit too late now, and I'm just not really sure about its effectiveness either.
Not only that, the way it's being carried out, even though the idea would be a ground incursion versus dropping bombs from above will reduce civilian casualties, it's not really happening because civilian casualties are significant right now. And of course, this is terrible. This is a humanitarian issue that we are all concerned with, but also it foments, for PR purposes, the Israel should not exist, anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli sentiment on the Palestinian side. This is a disaster all around. And I think that I am not denying that, number one, Israel has a right to defend itself, as any country would in a similar situation. I am not denying that Hamas is a systemic impediment to peace and a problem in this puzzle, not even a tiny bit of a solution. I stand by all of those statements that I've made for years on this program. However, we know from experience that this ground incursion will get us no closer to peace.
Right, and certainly the inclusion of Hezbollah will bring us no closer to peace either.
Oh, the involvement of Hezbollah helping Hamas is going to drag us farther away from peace. And now the issue becomes, if and when will there be a ceasefire agreement? Forget about even restarting the peace talks, Lewis. Now we just need a ceasefire.
Right. That'll probably be harder to do when you have troops on the ground doing their thing. It's like you said, it's a total disaster.
So speaking of Israel and Palestine and the way forward and Israel's actions in Gaza, Secretary of State John Kerry, a prior guest on this program numerous times, has been caught on a supposedly unknown hot mic talking about the Israeli incursion into Gaza. The way this happened was that Secretary of State John Kerry was appearing on a variety of the Sunday morning talk shows yesterday. And in between tapings, Kerry was on the phone with an aide, and he supposedly didn't realize that the mic was on for Fox News Sunday. And he had a phone conversation with an aide where he said, seemingly sarcastically, "Oh yeah, it's one hell of a pinpoint operation that Israel was running." And it was taken to suggest that John Kerry was saying, you know what? Israel is making a huge mistake here with this operation. It's obviously not a pinpoint operation. There are too many civilian casualties, which of course is true, right? Of course it is true that there are always too many civilian casualties in these cases. I'm going to play first the hot mic incident where John Kerry was supposedly caught unaware that he was on microphone. Take a look at that first.
Yeah. It's a hell of a pinpoint operation. It's a hell of a pinpoint operation.
Right. It's escalating significantly, and it just underscores the need for ceasefire.
We've got to get over there.
Yep.
Thank you, John. I think, John, we ought to go tonight. I think it's crazy to be sitting around.
Okay, so before we get to the questioning from Chris Wallace about this, I don't really think that John Kerry was caught here. In other words, what he said does not negate support for Israel, and at the same time, it is not propping up Palestinian groups that are haphazardly launching rockets into Israel. I think that if you're going to get caught on mic saying something like this is really not a bad thing to be caught on mic saying.
No, John Kerry is well aware that when you walk into a building, you assume that all the microphones are on. I don't think this is a slip-up. I just don't think people really understand what he was saying.
Okay, so then we get to Chris Wallace asking Secretary of State John Kerry, well, what exactly did you mean by that? And here is Secretary Kerry's answer.
I think it's very, very difficult in these situations. Obviously very difficult, Chris. You have people who've come out of tunnels. You have a right to go in and take out those tunnels. We completely support that. And we support Israel's right to defend itself against rockets that are, continuing to come in. Hamas has started this process of rocketing after Israel was trying to find the people who killed 3 young, and 1 American kid, 3 young Israeli citizens. It's disgraceful. And so, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to have this kind of operation. And I reacted, obviously, in a way that, anybody does with respect to, young children and civilians. But war is tough. And I said that publicly, and I'll say it again.
It's just a simple, basic assessment of the situation, right? I mean, John Kerry has taken a pretty standard point of view here, which is, if we take first it's really one hell of a pinpoint operation, of course, this is an operation that, by virtue of the types of weapons that Israel has, is going to kill too many civilians. If you consider where the rockets are coming from on the Palestinian side, if you consider the types of weapons that Israel is using, of course this is not going to be the pinpoint operation that it should be. And of course all of these Palestinian deaths are tragic. At the same time, John Kerry restates, Israel has a right to defend itself. Any country that was on the receiving end of this amount of rocket fire would defend itself. And what's interesting is, as I think about this, if you are a neoconservative war hawk and you control Israel, you fire back. If you are a libertarian isolationist, you fire back when people fire at you. If you're a liberal pacifist who only supports military action when your country is directly attacked, no preemptive wars, no third-party involvement in wars, you still respond if you are Israel. The problem is the civilian casualties. The problem is the lack of progress that this strategy takes on. And that, Lewis, is why I think that the Gaza incursion, as I've said from the first second of today's program, is a mistake. And I generally agree with what John Kerry is saying here.
I do. I think this whole thing is just a testament to the level of stubbornness on both sides of this altercation. Yet
another Malaysian Airlines airplane has crashed, this time allegedly shot down. I was in Detroit over the weekend at the Netroots Nation conference when this happened. We were waiting for Vice President Joe Biden to speak. He was about an hour late, specifically because he was on the phone dealing with this situation, which is the situation of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. The flight was scheduled, passenger flight, from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. It crashed. It is believed to have been shot down with a Buk surface-to-air missile. The aircraft went down near Kharkov in the Donetsk Oblast region of Ukraine, which is about 40 kilometers or 25 miles from the Ukraine-Russia border. 283 passengers and 15 crew on board the Boeing 777 died. Shortly after the crash, and this is where it is, of course, a drastically different situation than that of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, shortly after the crash, Donbass separatists took credit for downing a Ukrainian military aircraft. Later, once they found out that they had actually, in fact, downed a civilian aircraft flying in Ukrainian airspace, they denied involvement, saying, you know what, we actually don't have the equipment, we don't have the training to hit a target at this altitude. However, Ukraine has provided what they're calling video evidence that says Russia provided the Buk missile launcher and crew to the separatists, and they claim to also have intercepted phone calls which show a separatist officer authorizing the decision to fire on this airplane. The United States also claims to have credible evidence that the missile was fired from a separatist position near Donetsk. Lewis, so many questions here. Number one, the U.S. claims to have this evidence. Presumably, we will soon have some kind of confirmation, assuming everything is to be believed, that this plane was shot down. So first of all, we're seeing in Russia all sorts of conspiracy theories around this. One conspiracy theory meant to kind of deflect blame from Russian separatist movements that this is actually Flight 370, which has finally been now, it was landed somewhere, and then it took off again and now has been shot down, and this is all a cover to try to blame Russia for something that had nothing to do with them. There are other conspiracy theories that this is it's just not true, that the equipment was there to shoot down this plane, et cetera, et cetera. That's going on in Russia. Number two, we also have the problem of Malaysia Airlines. Presumably, this is just terrible luck. They had flight MH370. They now have this other flight shot down by militants, allegedly. Is this the end of Malaysian Airlines?
Well, certainly you can't blame the airlines if this plane was shot down. And by all witness accounts, the thing exploded in midair. So it seems like that's exactly what happened. I would like to assume that people will understand that that had nothing to do with the airlines. But certainly it's got to be unnerving if you're about to board a Malaysian airline flight.
Would you fly on a Malaysian Airlines flight right now? Would you get on next week Malaysian Airlines airplanes?
I mean, maybe if I had no choice.
Yeah, I don't think I would. And consciously, I understand these air crashes are very, very rare. The MH370 situation is absolutely anomalous. At the same time, we now have flight MH17. I guess if I knew I was on a flight that wasn't going to go anywhere near Ukrainian airspace and I have no choice, I guess I get on the flight. But certainly I wouldn't be booking a Malaysian Airlines flight at this point.
Yeah. Of course, you have to think about how many Malaysian airline flights are in the air right now and have been since over the course of, these two incidents happening. And I'm sure it's fine. But, you can't help but think about it.
The United States states with a higher minimum wage have gained more jobs in recent months. We've made very simple, basic economic arguments for why a reasonably higher minimum wage is good for the middle class. It is a positive thing for the economy. It stimulates demand given the marginal propensity to consume of those who are on the lower end of the income spectrum versus the higher end. We've talked about the positive effect it has on crime reduction to have a slightly higher minimum wage. We've already spoken about San Francisco, which was leading the way on a higher minimum wage and didn't suffer from negative economic repercussions. We've talked about all of that, but now we have more data, and more data, at least for some people, is a good thing. According to a new report by the Associated, as reported by the Associated Press, a study by the Labor Department says that states that enacted higher minimum wages at the beginning of 2014 have already seen the number of jobs available to citizens increase at a higher rate than in the states that did not enact higher minimum wage laws. There are 13 U.S. states that raised their minimum wages at the beginning of this year, and they have added jobs at a faster rate than those states that did not. The 13 states that increased minimum wages have seen jobs grow an average of 0.85% from January through June, whereas the other 37 states saw a 0.61% rise in jobs. This is equivalent to about 33% larger job increases in the states with minimum wage increases compared to those without. Significant, Lewis?
Incredibly significant. And, you could talk all day about how this works economically, but think about it from an individual point of view. If you're looking for a job that is decent paying, you're avoiding a lot of jobs that would be, available to you. And all of a sudden, with this higher minimum wage, you might think to yourself, well, okay, I can go work at one of these places now because they'll pay me what I want to be paid.
So counter arguments. Let's go through the counter arguments. Number one, 6 months of data is simply not enough to make any broad statements. That's fair. Okay, let's kind of hold that in our minds. Number two, is this causation or is it correlation? In other words, is it the minimum wage increase that has caused faster job creation, or is it simply a correlation that is not a causal relationship, maybe related to something else? That is also maybe true. So let's step back. While maybe this is not enough data to say that increasing minimum wages to a kind of very moderate degree creates jobs at a faster rate, we can say that the nightmare scenarios from the right, from the voodoo economic supporters, that any increase to the minimum wage kills jobs, those arguments clearly are not true. And sometimes just being able to disprove an argument is more effective than proving another argument.
Right. Jobs has not been killed. And also, it still does not cost $20 for a Big Mac.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's take a break. We have a great program for you today. I will talk about my trip to Detroit a little bit later on in the program. Glad you're with us on this Monday.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show membership program is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Liberalbias.com is now presenting weekly videos on the Liberal Bias Video YouTube channel. Check out Liberal Bias Video to learn all the ways that reality has a liberal bias. David Dolphin is today's member of the day. And I couldn't thank David enough. David is voting with his dollars. He is supporting alternatives to homogenous corporate media and getting a whole bunch of great membership perks while doing it. So please join David by going to davidpakman.com/membership. Sign up today. Get access to all membership perks. There's a lot going on there. Of course, you can also support the David Pakman Show if you do any shopping on Amazon. You go to our website first, davidpakman.com. Click on the Amazon banner on the right side of the page and bookmark that link. Use it whenever you shop. Amazon sends us a kickback. Doesn't cost you anything extra. A couple of interesting items on Amazon that have been purchased lately by our audience. Number one, the film Snowpiercer, which is still in theaters. Apparently now, Lewis, you can rent movies on Amazon that are still in theaters. Did you know this?
Actually, the first I heard about it was with Snowpiercer, but I guess that's all just up to, production companies, and I don't know, anything can be worked out.
You told me you were interested in seeing it. Have you seen it yet?
No, not yet, but I see that it has been getting pretty good reviews.
Well, what's interesting is the concept was interesting to me, and then I looked at the trailer, and the trailer actually turned me off from it a little bit, but when I was in Detroit over the weekend, I talked to a couple of people that had seen it, and they said, no, the trailer doesn't even represent what the movie is, and it's way better than the trailer actually makes it seem. So I probably will actually go see it.
I find that's the case with most movies. Trailers are, highly deceitful.
All right. Wow. Lewis, a stunning, blistering attack.
Well, it could go either way. It could go either way really with trailers, but
or they could also contain the three good parts of a movie.
That's true. Very true.
Okay. Also purchased on Amazon by our audience, a lot of noise canceling earbuds. I actually need some new ones for the subway. I like to listen to podcasts sometimes on the subway, but I only have like regular, almost like iPod earbuds, and I have to turn it up so loud to hear it over the subway noise that I know it's going to damage my ears. So I have no idea, Lewis. I know that they have noise canceling or even just like in-ear earbuds that block out sound. Some are $30, some are $300. I have no idea what I should be buying. So if people have suggestions, please send them in.
Or you could just get a pair of headphones that cover your ears like this. Those help a lot too.
Yeah, but
although they are bulky.
They're very bulky, exactly. I like the earbuds I have because when I get off the subway, I throw them in my pocket. You know, if I'm going to meet someone for coffee, for example, I don't then want to be carrying around earbuds or have to bring a bag or something like that, you know?
Yeah, or wear those big, bulky, Beats headphones around your neck at the meeting.
That would also be probably, that would not be a good idea either. Yeah, so send me some suggestions. And remember, use our link to Amazon for all Amazon purchases. The immigration situation is still firing a lot of people up. Louis Gohmert is not relenting. Louis Gohmert, it seems like every week now, is coming up with some new, even more outrageous claim around President Obama and immigration. Louis Gohmert now saying that President Obama refuses to defend women from illegal alien rape, as he puts it. Tea Party Congressman from Texas, Louis Gohmert, accused President Obama on the House floor of allowing refugee immigrants, many of whom, of course, are children, who are allowed to be in the U.S. because of a law that was signed in by Republican President George W. Bush, to rape thousands of American women. Let's listen to Louis Gohmert make the case.
People are being killed in America, and specifically, according to these figures, 2,993 that we know of by criminal aliens in this country. And they've committed at least 7,695 sexual assaults. You want to talk about a war on women? This administration will not defend the women of America from criminal aliens by the thousands and hundreds of thousands. Well, we know thousands, and we know people are coming in by the hundreds of thousands illegally. And this administration wants to talk about other people having a war on women when they will not defend the women that are being sexually assaulted by illegal aliens in this country.
Okay, first of all, first and foremost, the government doesn't actually keep a record of how many undocumented immigrants commit crimes each year in the United States. Of course, we know that most undocumented immigrants are here to improve their lives. They have a very clear incentive, actually, not to commit crime. And of course, most of them don't, because they know that if they commit a crime, they're going to be deported. Why would they want that? That doesn't make any sense. But a lot of the numbers, let's play it out, right? A lot of the numbers that people like Louis Gohmert state are based simply on incarceration rates. And if you look at incarceration rates, this doesn't really represent the amount of violent crime that's being committed by undocumented immigrants, because simply being in the country illegally can get you arrested. And that, of course, is not a violent crime. So even if we follow this through, Louis Gohmert has absolutely no accurate data to present us with.
Of course not. This is just good old classic fear-mongering, David. Unfortunately, it's usually very, I don't know. What's the word? Is it successful? I mean,
yeah, well, it's very visceral. The arguments are very visceral, and they hit people in a very, very deep way. And what people should be thinking of is, wait a second. Louis Gohmert is a Republican. Louis Gohmert claims to be really concerned about the number of women that are getting raped, specifically by undocumented immigrants. At the same time, Louis Gohmert is part of the Republican Party that constantly has been trying to redefine rape to make the definition of rape even more narrow, which would allow rapists to have no or less harsh penalties and prison sentences. How is it even believable that the guy who is involved in clearly disregarding the problem with rape in this country all of a sudden is really concerned with the war on women and undocumented immigrants raping American women? It just doesn't compute, Lewis. It's almost like there's a double standard, hypocritical position he's taking merely for political gain.
Perhaps for political gain, perhaps just because he hates these people who are coming into his country. But I would say not only good luck finding one instance of him trying to help women when it comes to rape in this country overall, I would say good luck finding one instance of him trying to help women at all overall during his time in office.
If you're raped by an undocumented immigrant in Louis Gohmert's world, are you allowed access to a legal and safe abortion?
I doubt it. I really doubt it. If he can't flip-flop on that, David, it might cost him re-election.
Michelle Bachmann, on the other hand, is blaming U.S. job losses as well as rape on young, undocumented immigrant children. Yeah, that's exactly what she's doing. She actually tried to blame young immigrant children, many of them grade school age, not even teenagers, for the rape of an unnamed college student, a deadly 2008 crash caused by an undocumented immigrant bus driver, and even the loss of American jobs. Remember, of course, these immigrant children are allowed to stay in the U.S. because of a law signed in by Republican President George W. Bush back in 2008. Here's Michelle Bachmann explaining this hypothesis.
Listen, we have all kinds of problems in the country, but there are 50,000 who are children, who are young people who've come here. Are you calling them invaders? You're saying these children are invaders in your eye.
Foreign nationals that have come into the United States are between 300 to 500,000. My heart is broken for a female college student in Minnesota who was raped, murdered, and mutilated by a foreign national who came into our country. There is an illegal alien who came into our country, and we had a school bus full of kids in Minnesota. 4 children were killed on that school bus because an illegal alien driving a van
every one of
went
these kids
into
for
that school
hold on
bus.
a second.
Well, I'll tell you,
there are lines that can't be crossed.
If you
here.
want to talk about compassion,
I'm sorry, Congresswoman. There are lines that can't be crossed. Are you going to
my
scapegoat
tears are crying
these
for the
children
family members
for the crime of this
that lost
despicable
4
person?
little children on a
and we should
school bus
stand
in
with those
Minnesota,
children.
and a
But
woman,
we should not scapegoat every one of these kids for that despicable crime. You know better as a congressperson than to lay at the feet of these children the acts of a despicable criminal.
Don't scapegoat the American people right now who are losing jobs. In fact, look at Chicago last weekend.
Her tears are crying. Not only is she crying, even her tears are crying. She's so upset. So Arturo Garcia from the Raw Story first reported about these claims, and he writes that while it's unclear which rape case Michelle Bachmann is referring to, the crash that she alludes to is probably the 2008 accident that resulted in the deaths of several children, which was the bus was being driven by an undocumented immigrant. And Republicans have seized on that to criticize U.S. immigration policy. It almost sounds like Michelle Bachmann is just against immigration, period, which is, of course, stunning, given the history of this country being made up of immigrants moving to this country, and the fact that it was either her family or Marcus Bachmann's that came from Switzerland, and she actually obtained that citizenship, and then, of course, renounced it once it became controversial among Republicans.
At least she was not spewing this stuff in a place where it would go uncontested.
Van Jones did a pretty good job, and also Charlie Rangel of saying, "What are you doing?" Even Newt Gingrich, who was sitting there with her, was looking at her like, "What is this woman talking about?"
Yeah, so she is completely nuts, David. I don't know what to say about it. It speaks for itself, really.
Michelle Bachmann seems to be entrenched in this ongoing battle with Louis Gohmert to see who can make the most outrageous, boneheaded claims. And honestly, I think that Michelle Bachmann is winning.
I think she's winning, too. It's pretty hard to beat Michelle Bachmann at that game.
Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Next, very interesting ideas around why Hobby Lobby supporters are opposed to access to birth control. Stay with us.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Let's talk more about the Hobby Lobby Supreme Court decision. Throughout the conversation around the Hobby Lobby decision, there's been opposition to birth control, to access to birth control from the religious right, premised on the idea that if you have access to birth control, you're essentially encouraging promiscuity and risky sexual behavior, and that that's a bad thing, and thus making birth control not available will help to limit that type of behavior. A lot of right-wing groups actually filed amicus briefs in favor of Hobby Lobby by arguing exactly that point, saying women should not be able to have consequence-free sex. So where does this idea come from? I initially was thinking, well, this does fit into this strict father morality idea, right? Which is it should not be consequence-free. Birth control prevents strict father. It's more of a nurturing father, which is we have a method for you to be able to do what you want, but not face the strict consequences. Conversely, not having birth control it falls under strict father morality. If you have sex, you are more likely to get pregnant, and then you will have to have that baby, and you will be punished for your bad action. You're having sex that you didn't mean to be procreative. There's new research, though, which now has been published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, which asked people about the attitude towards whether or not women should be able to have consequence-free sex, or the way they put it was, is it okay for a man and a woman who recently met to just have sex with each other because they want to, not because they plan on being in a long-term relationship or want to have a child together? That was kind of how that question was couched. And and what they found is that those who oppose this type of what is designated as casual sex also tend to believe that women need a man to support them financially, right? So within this worldview, within the internal logic of this worldview, sex outside of a serious monogamous relationship is too risky, because if women don't have paternity certainty, right, the knowledge that a particular man will help them financially with this child, how would they know who they're going to rely on for the support of this child in the future? So what the researchers concluded is that there's this outdated view, this outdated attitude really towards women's pregnancy risk, and it's connected with financial need. This is literally a retrograde view, right? The idea that women can't be promiscuous or have consequence-free, non-procreative sex because there won't be a man in place to support that baby financially. It's an incredibly outdated view, but it perfectly explains why the religious right Hobby Lobby group would be opposed to birth control.
I think it does. It's an interesting find, but perhaps one that, I don't know, maybe we could have predicted.
It's not completely unpredictable. You're right, because there's the kind of strict father morality part of it, but then there's also the question of what other reasons are there for supporting this view. It's about legislating morality, and isn't it also about controlling women?
It is, and it's really all rooted in I believe, something religious. I think that's the key thing here. And
take it a step further. I thought these conservatives were small government. Why is it the government's business now to regulate and manage promiscuity, casual sex versus serious long-term relationship sex? I thought small government didn't want that, right?
I don't know. I guess when your religious text dictates morality and you think that your government should be subservient to said religious text, that, I don't know, the two kind of have to mingle.
There's a new study in the behavioral and brain sciences which employs a practice called open peer commentary. So when an article of significance is published, peers can write in and comment, and then the writers of the study then have to respond, or they don't have to, but it's kind of the way it's arranged. They respond to those comments. So there's a study written by John Hibbing of the University of Nebraska, which argues that political conservatives have what's called a negativity bias, meaning that they are physiologically more attuned to negative, like threatening and disgusting stimuli in their environments. And this may be connected to why they are more conservative. We've talked in the past about the larger fear centers in the brain of conservatives. We've talked about the lack of empathy in the brains of conservatives, but we've also talked about the effect of nurture, right? The effect of authoritarian parenting, leading to more conservative views when the child is older, spanking leading to more conservative views when the child is older, etc. This study speculates that there is an evolutionary imperative here where in the past, if you look at 12,000 to millions of years ago in early and pre-humans, there was actually a benefit to this negativity bias. It made people run from things that were dangerous to them faster than if they didn't have this strong aversion and this reaction to fear. Of course, this is not really valuable in modern society. The incredible thing is, after this paper was released, 22 out of 23 of the colleagues that responded agree with this general concept. So this is interesting because back in 2003, there was a similar study done, and a lot of right-wingers like Ann Coulter and George Will and National Review, they all said that this was pseudoscience, that this didn't make any sense. There was no physiological explanation for conservatism. Now, the peers seem to almost unanimously agree with the concept, but they say we need to look more into the modern-day effects of it.
This sounds very similar to that study we talked about that tried to explain being a Republican as having a larger fear portion of the brain.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, no question about it. It does align with that. And we've talked about how a lot of conservative ideas are outdated and they're in the past. It seems like maybe even conservatism is influenced by outdated brain processes, which is quite a stunning revelation.
That would be incredible. Of course, I guess, does it not make sense to be conservative? Is that what we're saying? Certainly, if you're a very rich person and,
for tax purposes, economic,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it could depend on your situation, but it's an
You're
interesting
absolutely
study.
right. It's a different question as to whether fiscal conservatism makes sense if you have a lot of money. That's a different question, but a very, very interesting study. Send me your thoughts on it. We'll have your voicemails and much more coming up after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Sarah Palin continuing her calls to impeach President Obama. It seems that Speaker of the House Republican John Boehner does not want to impeach President Obama. So now Sarah Palin is trying to appeal, I guess, to a higher power. She says God wants President Obama to be impeached. She said a lot of really nutty things at the Western Conservative Summit in Colorado a couple days ago. But this is one of the craziest things that she said.
This president's forgotten man is we, the people. And we, the people, know that our best days are still ahead because we know that God shed his grace on thee, America. He's given us our freedom to do what's right. God doesn't drive parked cars. I think he expects us to get up and take action in order to defend these freedoms that are God-given. I think it's an affront to God to let this go on because he gave us these freedoms. We're not going to let someone, a person, a party, take them from us. We're not going to dethrone God and substitute him with someone who wants to play God.
What a really great Tina Fey impression that she was doing.
Yeah, seriously, David. Incredible stuff from Sarah Palin.
Why is God always telling Republicans to do really ridiculous stuff, right? I mean, God told Republicans, including George W. Bush, that it was a really good idea to go into Iraq. God told Michelle Bachmann that she should run for president, if you believe that. God now apparently telling Sarah Palin that President Obama must be impeached. Republicans seem to always have God to fall back on. Or at least, I guess, their highly partisan version of God is a better way to explain it.
Is it falling back on or is it leaning on? I feel like a lot of these politicians totally depend on all this God rhetoric just to get elected and just to stay in office.
The millions and millions of Christians who support President Obama should be highly offended by what Sarah Palin is saying. The idea that God has told Sarah Palin or that God wants President Obama impeached should be highly offensive to all people of faith who don't think necessarily that that's the case, or who just don't think that if there is a God, that God gets involved in the minutia of presidential politics in one country, on one planet, in one solar system, in one galaxy of the universe. Sarah Palin could be an undercover Democrat. These ideas are so outrageous.
Could be. I really doubt it, though. And if God doesn't want President Obama in office, why doesn't he just, I don't know, strike him with a lightning bolt or teleport him to Mars or something?
Right. If God really didn't want President Obama to be president, there are simple ways than trying to get a congressional impeachment done, right? If you're really God, you can get him out.
I know, yeah. None of this impeachment has worked. Nothing has worked to get him out. So why do it the hard way?
I was in Detroit over the weekend for the Netroots Nation conference. It was a great, great time. My reactions to Detroit were, listen, clearly Detroit is in a significant downfall. I talked to a lot of people. We had a Young Turks David Pakman show, Best of the Left, Majority Report with Sam Cedar, meetup. A bunch of people came out. Great to meet a lot of people. A lot of people saying, I've been to New York, and one of the big differences is that there's really no restaurants here in Detroit that are really good. It's really tough to find good places to eat, which is true. You get spoiled being in cities like New York, where every block has 3 to 5 great restaurants. There were buildings in Detroit that we drove by that looked like, not that they were abandoned, they looked like they had been bombed, Lewis. And it was absolutely incredible to see this. We participated. We went to the water rally, the rally to prevent people's water from being turned off. There was news coverage of that near the convention center. That was very, very interesting. One of the most incredible things was I got to the airport, large airport, nice airport, almost no people. The airport was almost completely empty. It was like being in a very small airport in the middle of the night, but it was a relatively large airport in the middle of the day, and there were just no people. And this was the same even downtown. Very few people walking around. Every restaurant we went to was mostly people from our conference. Very, very sad state of affairs for Detroit, and I hope that they can recover from this.
It seems things are just getting worse. I don't see at this point how they can recover from such a staggering, debt issue. But we'll see, David. It would require quite a bit of saving and government rescue here.
Also, some shocking revelations. Not shocking, but I was surprised. I was talking with Sam Cedar at the conference. We hung out quite a bit, and he mentioned he had been doing some cartoon voiceovers. And I said, "Oh, what cartoons?" And he said, "Oh, I'm the health inspector on Bob's Burgers," which is incredible because I recently started watching some episodes of Bob's Burgers, and I remember the character. It didn't even occur to me that it might be Sam. But I guess if you're not listening for voices then it stands to reason you wouldn't pick them out.
Yeah, there are very few of those voice actors you can always recognize when they're playing cartoon characters.
Although I think H. John Benjamin, who is in Archer and Bob's Burgers, he has a very recognizable voice.
He is one of the ones with a recognizable voice, for sure.
We have a voicemail line that you can call anytime. 219-2-DAVID-P is the voicemail number. Here is a voicemail about Hobby Lobby, actually.
Hey, David, some interesting thoughts you guys had today. Just wanted to let you know this, my opinion. This is John. About the Hobby Lobby thing, you never mentioned exactly all the birth control items that Hobby Lobby does cover. 2, if you really don't like the fact that a company, spiritual or environmentally safe or unsafe, if you don't like the way they operate from your emotional point of view, you have the right to leave the company and find a job somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous argument, because whether or not someone can choose to work at Hobby Lobby or not is an unrelated issue to that of whether the Hobby Lobby decision allows Hobby Lobby to deny religious freedom to their employees. That is a different thing. Of course, people can work or not work there. The question is there a denial of religious freedom happening based on the decision? Two different issues. Let's not mix them up. Today on the bonus show, a Russian man beats the bank at its own game. We will talk about stem cell therapy gone awry and Rhode Island's accidental legal prostitution experiment. That and more on the bonus show, hosted by producer Louis Motamedi. Go to davidpakman.com/membership to become a member and get access to the bonus show, as well as so many other great membership perks.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.